Century for the Nifty, triple century for the Sensex, and 4 centuries for the Nifty Bank. 4 to 30 points on the Nifty Bank. Infosys is the stock that should come up for you, leading the charge in just the last half an hour. All the IT stocks are gaining. Infosys now higher by about 2%. HCL Tech too joins Infosys in the party. In fact, not just the frontliners, we have all the mid-cap IT stocks doing fairly well as well. Case in point, Tata Elxsi, which is now spiked to the high point of the day. Along with that, we have Oracle Financial Services as well, which is at the highs of the day. In fact, we talk about the IT stocks itself. We understand from sources that L&T board may have cleared the acquisition of VG Siddhartha's stake in Mindtree. This has been a story which is has been long impending. Mugdha Warrior, who's been tracking this story, joins in with more details. Mugdha?
Yes, you're right. The L&T board has approved the acquisition of the Mindtree stake, and L&T is likely to pick up 24.4% stake in Mindtree at rupees 981 per share. Now, we understand the term sheet with VG Siddhartha will be signed as early as Monday, and our sources were telling us that this deal was set to be closed today, but some technicalities have pushed it to early next week. And VG Siddhartha will be selling his entire 20.4% stake that he holds along with his CCD entities. But, there are some other minority shareholders which will also be selling to L&T, which include Mansa Capital, a shareholder named Rekha Shah, and of course L&T MF, which holds about 1.08%. So these shareholders will also be selling either entire or part of their stake to L&T, and the total stake will come up to about 24.4% is what we understand. And our sources are also telling us that L&T is looking to hike its stake in Mindtree to 51% through a voluntary open offer. So that's what we have. Again, this is an exclusive. So finally, after months of speculation, this deal is set to be signed by Monday.
All right. Thank you so much, Mukta, for getting us all those exclusive details. Our ticker team is telling us that the rupee is at the high point of the day at the moment, 69 rupees 13 paise against the dollar. But remember that everything is gearing up for the general elections as the countdown really begins. So we assess here how the macros of the country have really fared in the BJP-led government tenure since the year 2014. Latha is here with the full analysis. Latha.
As part of our countdown to the elections, we have our special series, It's the Economy, where we are looking at various aspects of the economy in the past 5 years. And we start with the macros. When we say macros, the first obvious indicator is GDP. How did the 5 years of the BJP perform vis-a-vis the previous terms in terms of GDP growth? It clearly stands higher at 7.5%. But that is because the back series was recast, something which most economists in the country are uncomfortable with, the recasting of the previous GDP numbers up to 2004. So let us look at the older numbers, the older series of the GDP without the backcasting. If we look at that, then the BJP 5 years are just as good as the second term of the UPA and not quite good compared to the first term of the UPA, where the average was 8%. And especially if you look at the last 3 years of the BJP term, it is clearly a drop from a high of 8.2 to 7.2 to 7%, and some believe it may not even touch 7% in the last year. Now, one of the reasons why there was discomfort with the previous recasting of the GDP series is because of the other data that has caused a loss of faith in the GDP numbers. The loss of faith is partly because growth indicators have shown that the economy did actually worse in the last 5 years. First, look at earnings growth. The last 5 years have seen the slowest earnings growth for corporate India in the last 20 years. It stands at just 4.1% average. And we are looking at Nifty earnings compared to Nifty earnings growth of 10 to 15% in the two terms of the UPA, the first UPA and the second UPA. While corporate earnings are seen picking up in the current year, these are just the 5 years of the BJP. It's coming up to maybe 9% in the current year, but still not even touching double digits. Likewise, let us look at credit growth. That has again been the weakest if you compare to the previous terms. If you compare in the last 20 years, it's under 10% in the averaging in the last 5 years compared to a credit growth of 15 to 28% during the 2 terms of the UPA. Let us take another growth indicator, gross fixed capital formation. That's clearly picked up in the last 5 years, coming up to about 7.7%, definitely higher than the 2nd term of the UPA, but it is still half of what it was in the 1st term of the UPA. Now let us look at indicators other than growth. First, inflation. Here the BJP clearly has a fabulous record compared to UPA too. I mean, inflation is at half what it was on an average of this 2nd UPA term. But one has to caveat this. Global inflation itself was very high during the 2nd UPA term, that is 2009 to 2014. Remember, crude was averaging over $100 for most of that time, and metals too had ruled very high. Metal prices crashed in 2015, and therefore, you know, that helped the BJP term also have a good inflation number. Again, we must caveat that food deflation may not even be an achievement. It is actually a curse in the current BJP term. Let's look at now the deficits. Current account deficit is definitely much better controlled by the BJP government for the 5 years than the UPA did. The only caveat over here is, despite this very stable performance on the current account deficit front, it did not help exports. In fact, export growth has been the worst in the UPA term, just 1.9%, as you can see, compared to a high of 23.9% in the UPA first term and 12% annual growth every year average in the 2nd UPA term. Fiscal deficit, here again, very good achievement as far as the current BJP term is concerned, falling from over 5% average, 5.3 during the UPA 2nd UPA term to an average of 3.7% in the BJP years. However, one must be wary of the last year of this term, where an overestimation of tax revenues to the extent of 19.5% makes this year's fiscal deficit a little difficult to believe, little difficult to achieve. Also, a lot of loans taken by the government are probably hiding in public sector units like Food Corporation and PFC. So probably the deficit is higher than what these numbers indicate. Well, with that, let's go to the next indicator. The NDA government's performance as far as employment is concerned. And here, it's quite clearly the worst. We rely on the latest NSSO survey, which, of course, the government refused to put in the public domain. We have the numbers thanks to Business Standard, and that shows that unemployment in the year 2018 stood at a 45-year high of 6.1% following demonetization. Now, that's a bad record, and what is worse, it was hushed up.
Well, Latha, thanks a lot for that. So it is indeed the economy. So we'll keep an eye out on that as we approach the elections. But moving from economy to infrastructure, or rather lack of it,